I am so excited for all of you to meet Maya because when we first met, I first talked to her. She was classic, like overwhelmed, not making the money she wanted, and in a photography business that was kind of drowning her a little bit. And to top it off, she was expecting another little baby and knew that something had to change.
To us raw and wriggling.
Welcome to the Raw Files, the podcast where photographers and videographers get inside the scoop on the latest in the visual world. No fluff, just real talk on gear, trends, and the stories that shape what we create. Think of it as your go-to escape to the creative island where you get inspired, pick up fresh tips, and stay ahead of the curve. Let's go. I should say let's shoot. Let's shoot.
Raw files. It's raw.
Thanks so much to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. So welcome, Maya, you were a wedding photographer in El Paso. I should probably say that, be more specific, but thank you so much for joining and telling everyone your story.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I don't think I ever asked you this, but were you like inside my world prior to the mastermind in some way?
So I first heard of you when I started my business like 5 years ago. I joined the PPA, Professional Photographers of America. Mm-hmm. And you happened, I don't know at what point in the past, you happened to like submit videos, I think, as part of like their system. That's kind of what opened me to your world initially. And then I don't remember the exact time, but at some point I saw your Photo Insiders and I joined that just prior to joining your mastermind.
Oh, and nice. So Photo Insiders.
Photo Insiders was kind of like my intro, my real intro, but I trusted that just because I'd already seen some of your videos on the PPA website. Yeah, that was kind of like my intro.
Oh, amazing. Well, yeah, that's good. I mean, PPA is it's 100 years old, that organization. They've been around forever. So to have their stamp of approval is definitely helpful.
Yeah.
All right. I'd love to know, because I gave a little brief introduction of like where you were when you joined, kind of the problems that we originally talked about, but maybe put it in your own words, like what you were thinking. And this was only 6 months ago-ish?
Yeah, I think like August. I actually don't remember exactly when, but August or September is when I joined. Yeah, so I moved to El Paso about 5 years ago. And really started doing full time in 2021. Yeah, I think at the beginning you kind of like start building your business, and there's so much that you know that you have to do that I felt like I could do it. But maybe around May of last year, I felt like I hit a ceiling, and not in terms of like where my business could go, but knowing what I should do next. Because I felt like I had done everything I knew that I should, but I didn't know the next steps of how to expand it further outside of the typical, like, just raise your prices.
Yeah. So like a business knowledge ceiling.
Yeah. I felt like I had reached the ceiling of what I could do in terms of raising my prices locally. Whereas like, okay, now what do I do? How else do I expand my business? Yeah, that's when I found your mastermind. And initially what interested me in the mastermind was thinking of, or knowing that there were other ways that I could expand my business that I hadn't thought of yet. And also learning from someone has gone through what I've done already and that had steps that I could follow at that point.
Yeah. I'm curious because, I mean, kudos to you. That's 5 years, like 5 years of running on your own knowledge, your own motivation, your own like everything until you hit that ceiling. Like, but you must have gotten some knowledge, especially since you mentioned PPA. So like, where were you going previously to get more knowledge, figure out what to do next?
Yeah. So I had taken a couple, probably just like 2 other courses outside of YouTube. Outside of the free stuff. So PPA, and then I did take another course from another photographer when I initially started that helped me kind of create, the foundation of my business in terms of contracts and just, that foundational structure. And then a lot of it was hustling which is good, but at the same time, you hustle better when you know what to focus on. And so there's a lot of like trial and error at the beginning. So yeah, I feel like I did have enough of a structure at the beginning. Personally, I feel like that there was success, but it got to the point where I felt like my brand could be stronger. The experience with my clients could be stronger. I didn't want to feel like I didn't feel like I had gotten there, like my business had gotten where it needed to be, but I felt a little lost on, hey, where do I go now in terms of expanding and, the experience that my clients have with my photography business, how can that be improved? And there's just like a lot of ideas.
The holes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like you knew all the holes, you knew all the big terms, the big things, but it was a matter of the how. Like, I know I have to get to that island over there, but how can I get from overbooked, overworked, overtired to, where, well, what were your goals? I'm curious, when you were thinking of your business at that time, what were your big goals?
I think a big thing was improving my brand was a big thing. Also, just management of my time. I had gotten to the point where I had a lot of weddings, but I was also feeling very overwhelmed. And I've always been on top. It's always on top of like my work, where I knew, okay, like everything will still be delivered on time in terms of like the client's experience, but my experience with, at this time now, 2 kids and being pregnant with my third, and just feeling like, okay, I need to be able to have a life at least a little bit during busy season. I know busy season is busy, but I needed to kind of figure out how to manage my time, ensure that I didn't experience burnout, or worse, that somehow this overwhelming feeling went, spread to my couples.
Oh, so. I really loved how you said my clients were getting a good experience, but I wasn't. It's so powerful. Just like brand that. Like, am I giving myself a good experience in my own business that I created to give myself freedom? Hey, photographers, before we jump in, I just want to take a minute to thank our sponsor, Squarespace, for sponsoring this video. Now, if you are a photographer who's thinking about having a website, think about using Squarespace. And let me just tell you, this isn't hype. I personally have used Squarespace for like well over a decade for so many of the websites I have had in the past. It's one of the biggest front-facing things I've done for my business. And here's why. Number one, it's beautiful, photographer friendly, tons of templates. Your website is your first impression, and Squarespace gives you clean, modern templates that make your photos look like $1,000,000 without needing a designer. Drag, drop, done. And of course, you could hire Squarespace designers. There's a ton of them. It also has built-in SEO that actually works. The galleries, that's another big thing. They make sure they don't take forever to load. Squarespace's engine optimizes the way that your photos look, so they're always crisp and clean, even on mobile. Fourth, integrated client booking tools and contracts. If you're trying to go to e-commerce and delivering, maybe you're selling prints, Squarespace keeps everything all in one place. If you've been trying to DIY your website or use something else, stop. Give yourself the same professional presence you give to your clients. Head over to Squarespace. I've got a discount for you. You can use this code. Thank you again, Squarespace, for sponsoring me, this channel, and supporting photographers and supporting this community, making it possible for myself and photographers everywhere to keep working. Okay. Back to the video. I would love to know, like, what has it been like for you since joining the Power Collective, the mastermind?
I liked how you mentioned that I could see the holes in my business. And I would say I thought I could see them, but joining the mastermind, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so many different ways that I can improve this business, like ways that I didn't even think of before. So joining the mastermind, I feel like with a business, you could just exponentially improve in so many different areas, right? And so joining the mastermind, it was very clear from the beginning that, okay, it's not like I'm going to be able to change everything in my business, but it did give me focus on very specific things. And so joining, there's just so many different topics, and I kind of, with you initially was able to kind of narrow down, okay, initially what we really want to focus on is time management and how to improve my editing workflow, the client experience. I didn't have a CRM at the time. And so having like a pre-vetted CRM through the mastermind and knowing, okay, this is a good one to go with, already gave me like the initial steps of what I should do. Honestly, probably the first 2 weeks, it was a little overwhelming because there was so much.
There
like,
is
okay,
so
what did I
much.
do?
It's a
Yeah, there's
lot.
a lot. There's a lot, but it's a good so much, right? But once I was able to kind of like focus on, okay, what is it that I need to work on presently to improve my business, and then what are some other things that I could improve as we go along? I felt confident about the mastermind really quickly.
Oh, that's so good. What were your
Mhm.
big wins? Like anything quantifiable, like, I don't know, profit going up, time saved, kind of the biggest things that you got out of it?
So I had probably my biggest wedding season, and also being pregnant in the first trimester. I was like, okay, like we need to be able to stay on top. And so you gave me some great tips with like trusting, editing help.
Yes. Well, because that
Yeah.
was one of your
Hmm.
big like things you were
Hmm.
skeptical about before
Yeah.
signing up with us. It was like, no, I'm not going to have enough time. I remember that, and I was like, no, no,
Hmm.
no. That's what we'll tech first.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
was a big move for you right away.
Hmm. And I don't know if you want me to share like the specific programs that you
It
had
just,
me. Okay, I was not sure, but for example, like using Imagine AI, I was like unsure of how much I trusted using that. Even though I had intermittently used it prior, I had never used it for entire wedding galleries. But being able to use that and tweak it and still use it more as a tool, and feeling like, okay, because I'm using this, I'm able to deliver my photos quicker, but obviously I'm vetting through them. I'm still double checking everything. But I was able to cull through my entire weddings within 24 hours after a wedding, and then have time to like still meet clients throughout the week, and then have it help me edit. And it was like a huge time saver. But I was able to like help my clients in other ways in terms of like communication, and just, you save time on one area, but it allows you to focus more time in other areas. And so using that in terms of editing was really helpful. Getting a CRM set up was super helpful, because at that point I didn't have to send individual Zoom links to clients. It was just automated, and I had never experienced that, and I'm never going back to sending all my reminders myself. So in terms of like time saving, that was really very much like an immediate change. Another win I would say is like the structure of my wedding collections, in term like with the engagement sessions, because I had that included
mm,
in my collections. And I think it was on one of the mastermind calls where you do with everybody. Someone mentioned like, "Oh no, you don't include that anymore. Have it as an additional service that people can get if they want." And so I made that change, and almost every couple that I've booked since has added that engagement session, which is a
oh,
huge win for
wow.
me. 'Cause it's
How
like,
much, do you mind
okay,
me asking?
yeah.
How much you're charging?
So I charge 400 for the 25 photos for 1 hour. And so I have it like a discounted one versus it's versus my a la carte when they have it
Right.
included with the wedding. But yeah, I mean, I don't know how many I've booked. It's probably been 5 now. So
But
what?
you were
Yeah.
making $0, and
Yeah.
now,
No, yeah, yeah.
and yeah,
So
potentially
there.
doing them for clients that didn't
Mhm.
even want them.
Yeah.
That's
So no,
amazing.
that's been a huge win in terms of another time saver, because now I'm being paid for that time to do my engagement sessions.
Yeah.
And, I think I had the mentality before that the more you add into your package, it's easier to sell, but some things you do need to pay your time for. Pay yourself, right? The last one was actually after I finished the mastermind, was with the album sales. And
So excited to hear.
I don't think I've told you about it yet.
Let's tell everyone. Let's back up, because that, first of all, is triggering for so many people when you say album sales.
Yeah.
So, before you joined with us, what were you doing when it came to albums?
So I already included albums in my packages, but with, depending on the collection, they either had 15, 20, or 30 pages included. After the wedding, they would select their top photos in PicTime, which is what I was using. And I would tell them how many photos would fit approximately,
Right.
which is not helpful, right? Because then they're getting
No.
exactly what's included.
And
And
they're
so,
stressed trying to narrow it
yeah,
down.
and then on my end, I feel like I'm trying to get them to pick their photos, months after their wedding. It was just, I start feeling bad. Like, are they going to come back and be like, I want an album 2 years later? Right.
Yeah.
And so there's just, it was not working, and I definitely didn't have a profit. I did have like add-ons that they could do in terms of, or upgrades, I guess, in terms of like the cover and things like that, which would offset the price a little bit, but I either paid for the album, outright, or I was
Right.
paying maybe a hundred bucks. But for the most part, I was always paying, or I made like $20 off an
Yeah.
album, right? And
Not
again,
inspiring.
yeah, I was like, again, it was like, oh, well, I have the album in there, and maybe it's like a selling point, which is why I kept it in. But in the mastermind, we talked about how do you sell an album? How do you actually make a profit off of it? And so the main change there was me doing, like, taking on the entire design of doing the photo selection, creating. It was a lot more time on me, but then presenting, a much more well thought out story and album for my client versus what they randomly picked that sometimes didn't always make sense together. And then just focusing on the sale of additional pages. And so that's what I was going to work on. And so
Yep.
I had set up I guess my like pricing on my website. And first of all these people that I am now creating albums for, they weren't like warmed up for this album sale. Like my
Right.
future clients will be, because these are, in the mastermind, there's all of like these emails that you can send out as you prep them
Right.
for this investment later on. And so I'm much more prepared for that for future. I started doing my album sales, and I will say for the first two, and I think with anything when you're selling something for the first time, it's just kind of a lot of figuring out. And I did
clunky.
it's clunky. I did have a little bit of a profit on both, but it was so minor that I was like, is this worth it? Because it's like I made $100 on the first. Their investment was larger, right? It was like $500, but with the upgrades and everything, I made 100. And then the second one, I also did that. And then the third one, I had sent them the pricing, but they hadn't seen it. So they had made a huge album, and then they had that sticker shock. I was like, dang it, like I need to be better at making sure they see the price. And so I kind of changed my email a little bit. But I had a couple. And at this point, I was like, okay, I'm just going to keep going, because I said I'm going to try this with all my couples. I had a couple that ended up investing $1,400 into their album, which was my biggest album sale I've ever had. Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. People actually will invest. It works. And every fourth or fifth couple did that. It's totally worth it. And in the mastermind, you talk about how you don't say no for your couple. They can choose how much they want to invest and what memories they want to keep. It's already been a win because I am not paying for my albums, even if on some of them it's very minor. But there are couples that will invest more into their albums and these memories. And now that door is open on my end. So that was a big win where I saw a possibility of that happening. So I'm not going back.
No, absolutely not going back. And like you said, like things are clunky in the beginning, but then you get it down and you're like, oh, wait, this is incredible. I'm curious, the wedding photography package that $1,400 client booked, do you remember how much the original package was for?
Yeah, it was $34.
That's perfect. Let me just do the math right here.
Almost half. Probably like 40%, 40-ish.
Yeah, 3,400, 41%.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's incredible. I mean, could you imagine if all of your income without shooting a single other wedding even went up by 25%, even half of that, right? That's crazy. So what has that perspective, shift in your mind? Like, what do you think that has done for your business overall?
I mean, I think that it's definitely a big mindset shift of what's possible, because prior to the mastermind, I would have said that's impossible. Like, no one's going to invest that much in my market. They're not going to invest that much in their wedding album or in these products. And
in my market, that's always my favorite excuse. No, not where I am, not where I live. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. And so, the mindset shift of what's possible here locally, what people will invest in their weddings, and what I can offer too. That it doesn't need to be limited just to me physically shooting the wedding and delivering photos. That my business can expand from that. And I put it down here, and I'm actually going to just open it up because I put it in my notes, because I did the math, and it ended up being, it's better than what I had before, but ended up being about $56 per hour for my album, like creating my albums with, especially with that one sale of 1,400, which for me, it's definitely worth it at, at that price. And as I get better in selling, this is a profit that I'm making outside of me physically being at weddings.
Yeah.
Especially now that I'm on maternity leave, like it's just an extra income that I can have in the off season. Yeah. So
That's amazing.
mhm.
What has surprised you the most about being in the mastermind community?
That surprised me the most. I
Although
think
I'm
how
assuming the
yeah,
$1,400 sale is surprising, but
yeah. No, I'm thinking specifically of like the program. I think it surprised me how extensive it was. It's just there's so much there,
yeah.
and it's so much good stuff. I think I told you before, it's very fluffless.
Yes.
It surprised me because sometimes I did do one course prior, maybe like 3 years ago. I'm not going to mention the name of it, but it was like
No.
just like PowerPoints, which is not a bad thing. But what differentiated that course versus yours was all of the phone calls that we would do, or the Zoom
Mhm.
calls with groups. And so not only did we have like really good information, but then we could ask you or other photographers questions directly. And this was like every single week of the mastermind.
Right.
And so that surprised me in how accessible you or some of the other, I don't know what
Photo
you'd call them.
coaches.
Yeah, coaches, yeah, were for us, whether it was like one-on-one calls or being able to write our questions in our personal chat and receive answers almost immediately, it felt, at least
Yeah.
within a few hours. That level of communication was really surprising. And I don't know how many students you have, but I imagine there are quite a few. And to be able to have that level of communication with everybody that felt really worth the investment on its
That's
own.
awesome. Do you think like that was the part in the program that made the biggest difference for you? I mean, between, because you've got the Vault, you've
Mhm,
got Vanessa Joy AI, you've got one-on-one calls, mastery calls with the group, clinics. Like
mhm.
what do you think the components that made the biggest difference for you to be able to achieve those wins of yours?
I personally love the calls with the mastermind group calls, only because people would bring up things that I wouldn't think of. And you would also get feedback from other photographers. And so that was just very eye-opening for me. I enjoyed kind of hearing about other people's experiences and what did they say during this call and what were their answers, or if this comes up in an initial consultation, what should I say? And people put in their ideas. For me, at least in the way that I learn, being able to have all that kind of feedback for different questions was probably my favorite part.
Who else do you think, who do you think this service would be good for, this mastermind overall?
Probably for people who are already somewhat established, because I feel like it's a great program to build upon, kind of take it to the next level in terms of where your business can go. I don't know how many years, at least personally for me, if you're stuck on where you should take your business, what the next step is for you, if you feel like you've reached a ceiling, I feel like this mastermind course would be really good for you.
I love that. And
Mhm.
for you, you talked about mindset shift, but how
Mhm.
has your confidence
I
shifted?
feel like I am much more confident in my ability, or like in what's possible. And so, I mean, for example, just like with the album sales, I have a lot more confidence in what I can provide, what people will invest in, and a lot more confidence in the kind of experience that I can give my couples. I guess I can't think of the right words. It's not coming up super confident right now. You can scratch this
No,
part
that's fine.
out, but yeah, it's just a lot more confident in what I can provide in terms of their experience.
Yeah. Well, isn't that like
Yeah.
such a huge part? Because you were talking
Hmm.
about originally being where you were and knowing, like, okay, I have these holes, I have these gaps.
Hmm.
But at face value, you actually didn't believe that the bridges we had for those gaps technically would work, right?
Hmm.
So there's the mindset shift that happens when a lot of times it's a big jump. It's just a big risk. Like, because I truly, in my head, my mindset believes one thing, but I'm going to go ahead and listen to advice and do another thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the confidence, most people wait until they are confident to make those jumps. But the truth is the confidence comes after you make the jumps.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah. Otherwise you're just sitting there in your comfort zone, right? Your comfort zone is where you're confident. And if you do that, then you're just going to stay in that same place where you're stuck, or you hit that ceiling, or you've plateaued in some kind of way. What would you say to someone who has that mindset shift that still needs to happen, that they're on the fence and they don't know where to go next? What would you tell them to look for?
I guess you could say somewhat of a leap of faith in yourself, but also when I initially met with you, I was unsure, right? I felt like, okay, I haven't seen it. It's definitely an investment. I'm not sure if it's going to be worth it. And I knew how busy the season was going to be. Like, will I have time? Will I actually have time? And you actually connected me with another photographer and being able to talk to them about their experience definitely helped my confidence initially, definitely going through the mastermind itself. And as you start implementing different things and you see that it works, that's where the confidence comes. Like, okay, we can do this. This works. It's actually having an impact. And when you make an investment, you're like, okay, what does that investment turn into money wise, right? And but there are so many different ways that your business grows. And I do believe in the long term, 100% worth the investment. It's not a quick fix for your business. It's really, here are these things that you can implement that over time are going to really transform your business. And yes, you do feel some things, or you do see some things like right away, but I'm totally confident in the future of my business and where it's heading now. Because at first it was like, where do I go? And now I have a very clear direction.
What did you, because you had a lot of things coming up in your mind, before you joined, before you decided to invest. What did you tell yourself that actually pushed you over the line to invest?
I think it was someone else has done it too. Like, talking to the other photographer, I think that was kind of the tipping point where I could see it wasn't just promises made by you, right? Even though I obviously would trust them, but initially I'm not sure. But I think being able to talk to another photographer and seeing their results and their experience, and they don't have any financial reason, like gain from me joining or not, right?
Right.
I think that was kind of the tipping point into just enough confidence to go for it and try it out and hope for the best, right?
Right. So a lot of photographers listening right now are probably identifying with your before state, right? Like, do I have enough time? Do I have, the market? Maybe that's a big one, the market to actually sustain a photography business. And they're hearing all of your transformations and how you've applied things and, all the things that you've gotten out of that mastermind. If you were to, talk to those people who are just sitting there like, yeah, I want all these things, but what kind of hope can you give them that would help shift their mindset? That there is a hope and a future for photographers.
What we might put up as or roadblocks, there are ways through them or around them or over them. And I definitely feel like this program shows you how to do it. Even if you feel like my market or, my town, or there's too many photographers here, or can I really do it? I think the mastermind addresses all of those questions or all of those doubts. And you're also talking to other photographers who, joined probably for the same reasons and are in different parts of their experience. And so you kind of get feedback from them too.
Yeah. Well, I hope people who are listening to this get, just a lot of hope. I think our photography industry right now is getting everything from like the price of memory going up to AI. Like, we're getting a lot of doubts, and we're getting just a lot of bombardment. And I truly hope that people listen to your story and they're motivated and they realize there is a path forward, and they just have that slight mindset shift, because it is possible, and you have done it and others have done it and are continuing to do it. So super excited. Thank you so much for coming on and just sharing your whole experience and how your photography has shifted this past 6-7 months. And I can't wait to hear not only when your little one arrives, but also how the rest of the year goes for your business.
Thank you.
And everyone who's listening, you can check out Maya's work in the show notes. Give her some love, give her a follow on Instagram, and keep motivating her forward. And then her story will motivate you as well. And this is the Raw Files. You can learn more about the Photo to Profit system, the mastermind, below in the show notes as well, if you feel like it's time to start treating your business like a business and not just a photographer with a job. See you next time.